If you are the Chinese, what have you learned about the art of the deal?
China punked the administration, and the administration backed down. That's no surprise because we've seen that happen over and over and over again.
Well, you heard it there from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Donald Trump got punked by China, but that won't stop an arsonist for trying to get credit for putting out the fire with his 90-day tariff rollback with China. There is some good economic news, and we'll tell you about it, with April inflation easing to a 4-year low. But that report comes with a warning label in the Wall Street Journal today that says this, quote, the April inflation numbers will be treated like observing sunny weather ahead of a widely anticipated storm, where the rainfall remains highly uncertain. And according to Bloomberg News today, Trump has already ruined Christmas. All signs point to the fact that damage from Trump's manufactured trade war might already be done. The Wall Street Journal editorial board today also pouring salt on Donald Trump's self-inflicted economic wounds, writing this of his 90-day tariff rollback with China, quote, as with last week's modest British agreement, the China deal is more surrender than Trump victory. Neither side announced any broader concessions on the substantive trade issues that weigh on the U.S.-China relationship. But the Wall Street Journal editorial board adds, if there's a silver lining to this turmoil, it is that markets have forced Trump to back down from his fever dream that high tariff walls will usher in a new, quote, golden age. The age didn't last 2 months, and it was more leaden than golden. Joining our conversation is anchor and correspondent for Bloomberg News, David Gura. Sam is back as well. David, I'm going to do something different. I ask you to jump in on the politics. We actually started this program with an on-camera attack of the Trump airplane gift from Ben Shapiro, criticism of the nation giving Trump the plane from Ted Cruz, and now the Wall Street Journal with the scathing review of the blinking in the eye of the China trade war. Where does sort of business and Wall Street see Trump's political strength, and do they take that into consideration when they try to figure out how to deal with this administration?
Well, I think that there is some relief here based on what happened over the course of the weekend, that this is the kind of less bad outcome that they were looking for. But you could put together a small volume with all of these editorials from the Wall Street Journal over the last couple of months. They've been highly critical of what the president's done here. And I think at the end of that editorial you read, they said, you know, he went up against Adam Smith, of course, the father of economics, and lost as a result here. But picking up on what you were talking about during the last segment, I think that there is a new sense from this president that he can act with a kind of impunity. He doesn't seem as outraged by all of this stuff as he did before. And look, I think he's going to be quick here to dismiss the Wall Street Journal as being some organ of some part of the Republican Party he's no longer beholden to. But I think that their point is well made, that this is nothing is advanced here. We're in this point now where there are these there's this consultative mechanism that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talked about, where there's going to be further dialogue going forward here. I mean, the achievement here seems to be there's a willingness on both sides to continue talking. But the baseline is tariffs are higher than they were when Donald Trump took office, and we're still in this kind of quagmire of not really knowing how we're going to get out of this mess.
David Gura, this is the first crisis Trump has created for which there'll be no narrative sort of disassociation. It's a regressive tax. It's a tax on stuff that will hurt people that make less money more than it hurts people that make a lot of money. Let me read to you something in The Atlantic. The more your income you spend on services, the less you pay in tariffs. Income that is saved and invested pays no tariff at all. So the richer you are, the more of your income you can save and invest. The working man's car is tariffed. The rich man's chauffeur is not tariffed. The poor girl's dolls are tariffed. The nanny hired to play dolls with the rich girl, not tariffed. Towels are tariffed. Membership fees at the sports clubs are not. The doorknob is tariffed. The butler who stands by to open the door is not. I mean, the defensiveness on the assault on the American consumer, whether it's the sneering response to Kristen Welker's question about the price of strollers, the absolute disdain for the 30-doll household. I've never known a 30-doll household, but that 30-doll household can damn well do with 2 dolls. The 500 pencils to 5, 250 pencils to 5. I mean, just the disdain for a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of instances that voted for him. When does that sort of conversation get held by leaders, by the people that run Walmart and Target and other stakeholders?
You know, I think it's a disconnect, it's disdain, as you put it. I think it's a lack of awareness of the fact that this is likely to have, in very short order, dramatic impacts on most Americans' lives. And, you know, everything that we've heard is that's going to happen in short order. So you bring up toys, for instance. I mean, we know that there's been this decline in shipments from China. We're in this very short 90-day period when hopefully something will be worked out to make this something that isn't longer lasting. But I think that the fantasy that we all lose sight of, and I'm up here in Boston today because I was talking to our former U.S. ambassador to China just about what's been going on. You know, something we talked about is this fantasy that, you know, you can put these draconian tariffs in place, you can ratchet up the rhetoric, and then with the snap of your fingers, you can reverse it, that you can kind of get back to the way things were, have a friendship among nations, go back to a level of trust that might have existed among nations. And I think that what we've learned here, and this extends to geopolitics and the relationship that companies have with one another and with other countries, is that that may not be as easy to do as the president thinks it is. And so, you know, your question is a very good one about when do we recognize this, when do leaders begin to recognize this. I think that it's coming into focus here that there are real consequences to the policies that the president has put in place when it comes to trade and tariffs. And there's still this level of hubris or a sense of righteousness that you can kind of back people into a corner, they can make changes. And again, you can go back to the way things were. Maybe the kind of landscape will be more favorable for you than it was before. I think that what we've seen here is a frustration with the way the administration has acted by these other countries and an unwillingness to kind of continue in this status quo sort of way. And that'll be the thing that I'm really paying close attention to here. Yes, again, we have this short pause, this reprieve with China in the near term, but what does it amount to long term? How much damage or reorientation of the geopolitical terrain has happened here that won't be able to be reversed?
As we speak, our president, Donald Trump, is going to the Middle East on a public corruption tour. He's no less corrupt than Edwin Edwards of Louisiana. In fact, he's way more corrupt. Edwin Edwards took $400,000. Well, in the Middle East, Donald Trump will cement deals totaling in the billions in exchange for favorable treatment by the U.S. federal government for these Gulf countries. The key difference is that Donald Trump isn't hiding it like other corrupt officials are. He's not ashamed. He's not doing it in secret. His corruption is wildly public, and his hope is that by doing it publicly, he can con the American people into thinking that it's not corruption because he's not hiding it. His first trip is to these three countries because these are the three countries that have agreed to pay Donald Trump money. Donald Trump is going to collect tribute.
Sam Stein, this piece about that which you do out in the open can't be illegal because you're doing it out in the open is a theme that's run through 9 years of Donald Trump's public life. But these are relationships that have really sort of strained the American public's tolerance for closeness of their leaders. And even Donald Trump seemed to speak to that in 2017 when it comes to Qatar, the nation that gifted him or is trying to gift him a new Air Force One. Let me show you that.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. And in the wake of that conference, nations came together and spoke to me about confronting Qatar over its behavior. I decided, along with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, our great generals and military people, the time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology.
Again, Donald Trump himself has been among a harsh and vocal critic of Qatar. Lots of Republicans. We showed you Ted Cruz at the top. But to Luke's reporting and your own, I mean, this is a Trump 2.0 version Whereas Trump Tower Moscow was one of the larger scandals of the first year of the Trump presidency. Was he or was he not trying to build one? This is all about launching the hotel with the pool on the floor 1,000 in Abu Dhabi, out in the open.
Yeah, I think actually Senator Murphy sort of undersells it in a way. Yes, of course, he's doing it out in the open, and because of that, he thinks that he should get away with it. But in fact, it goes beyond that. He thinks that if you question the ethics of this, that you're a sucker. I mean, that's the word that he used, saying, why would you not take the $400 million plane? You're not a loser. You know, you should take the free gift. And so it's not just public corruption out in the open. It's public corruption justified as a rational, if not a smart deal. And yes, it creates an insane amount of whiplash. It's not just that you see the 2017 clip in which he's praising Rex Tillerson and talking about his great generals and going off on Qatar. But it's to note, as Luke does, that where the Republican Party was just a couple of years ago. I mean, if you think back about the hypocrisy here, you know, it was Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma that they had accused as an impeachable offense for Joe Biden because it created an unprecedented conflict of interest. Well, this is a $400 billion gift out in the open. These are hotels being run by the president's kids. This is a crypto meme coin that the president is using the White House grounds to help promote. The standards that were applied to past presidents are not being applied to Donald Trump. He is getting away with it. And I know it causes some discomfort with Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, and frankly with others like Rand Paul and even Ron Johnson. But I don't think Trump cares. I think Trump just doesn't care anymore.
Trump's deals are falling apart. We've talked about this. One thing, I've mentioned this, but I think we really do need to hone in on it. We've talked a lot about how, you know, Donald's deals are lost because his whole narrative was we don't need deals. I was the deal maker in the first term, but now I'm the deal breaker. I'm going to go out and bring up all the tariffs, and that's going to be good because we're going to bring all the jobs back. That was his whole narrative. And again, I'm not saying that was even the reason he won. I think that voters were just mad about the status quo, and the U.S. has a two-party system, and so you throw the bums out. And if there was a Republican president in the last 4 years, they would have lost, and probably lost harder, because the Democrats, Kamala didn't come that far from winning, honestly. But like the reality is, regardless of why he won, his whole narrative was that we're gonna bring tariffs in and end world trade as we know it. And he's already backed off that promise. Now touting all the deals he's supposedly making, even if they're bad. But where he really lost is on America's narrative. Narratives matter. Stories matter. And the United States, for better or for worse, and in a lot of cases, the United States, guys, I think you need to understand, I come at this from a Canadian. The United States is often seen as a bad guy. You guys are seen as a bad guy, especially right now with the annexation stuff. The United States is not seen as a force for freedom. And for a lot of parts of the world, since 1945, the United States has been the world's bad guy in a lot of places. Right? And the fact is that the one thing they had was we are a great place to do business. And we are a good trade partner. If you trade with us, we'll trade with you and make it work. What Donald has done in a matter of weeks is make it so that the big, reliable trading partner in the world, the one stable superpower economically, it's not the United States, it's China. That's the biggest loss for an American president in decades.